And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Gordana, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Lucas. How are you today?
I am doing well as really I can be. The world is it's so bizarre. It is so
Yeah.
bizarre. It's the best way to say it. And I'm glad we're going to be talking about um, finding your truth, how to find your truth. I had a question I wanted to bring up this morning. Someone on Instagram asked me, I thought it was a really good question. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because this was someone said, "Hi, hope you're well. I want to tell you that I've been watching a daily video of your YouTube channel for a week. It has given me many perspectives and words of encouragement. So I wanted to thank you. However," and this is where and this is not bad, or she said, "Today a question arose about the non-negotiables in our life. Do you think it is normal that our non-negotiables change or look different according to a specific stage in our life? Or is it ideal that they don't change because they're directly connected to our soul?"
That's a great question. And let me show you what I have here. Look, I have the same question. I was going to put it out there because I I wanted to answer this question. It's such a good question. It's about the non-negotiable truths that
Yes.
we are negotiating away. I love it. It's such a synchronicity here that you
That's
saw
so
it,
great.
because I felt like, okay, so we need to address this question. It's
Yes.
such a beautiful question. Every time I take a new client, I give them an assignment, and the assignment is that I want them to ponder upon their non-negotiable truths. And
Mm.
most people never even think about that. What does that mean, non-negotiable truth? Well, a non-negotiable truth is something that you do not negotiate away. You will never, ever negotiate away that part of yourself.
Right.
And this beautiful soul asking us this beautiful question is actually asking if the non-negotiable truths change with time, or if they're the same all the time. And I've actually been thinking about this, and I think that they do not change. What changes is our way of describing our non-negotiable truths. Because the more in detail we go, and let's say that someone says, oh, I love this house, it's non-negotiable, I will never move away from this house.
Yes. Right.
That is not a non-negotiable truth.
Right. Right.
Because you have to boil it down to something that is so sacred to you that nothing can take it away from you. And when I do this exercise with myself, I find three things that are non-negotiable in my reality. And they're all interconnected, of course. One is freedom. Two is time. And three is love. And not always in that order. But for me, for instance, anything that makes me feel like I am giving away time, spending time in a way that is not congruent with who I am, I will say no to this. And I'll give you an example. When my son was, I think it was around 3, I got a really, really great offer for a job, which would change my financial status very much. And I went home and I thought about this, and then 2 hours later, I didn't need more than that. I called the guy back and I said, no, thank you. I'm honored, but no, thank you. I cannot do that. And he asks me why. And I say, I have a 3-year-old at home, and negotiating away my time with him, the time where he is growing, where I can watch him grow, it would feel like a sin to me. It would feel like something really, really wrong in my own frequency. So that's why I cannot take it. I need this time, because that time I can never get it back. I can always fix my career, but I can never get that time back. So that is a non-negotiable truth for me, that time spent with my son or anyone else that I love will always be prioritized than anything else. Of course, all my friends thought, you are crazy, you can't do this, you're making it so hard for yourself career-wise. I am not, because look at me today. I have a great career, and I have I have not negotiated away time with my son or with my family. The same thing goes with freedom. When I was studying to become an art critic, I thought that I was going to be a doctor in this. I wanted to take a PhD in this. And while I was there, I felt like I couldn't speak my truth because there are rules. You have to follow them or you can't continue on that path. And to me, that felt like putting myself in a box, which means that I'm not free. So being a free spirit, doing my own thing, that's a non-negotiable truth for me. It's painful sometimes because being a free spirit doesn't always bring you the money and all the things that you want in your life, but still, I cannot negotiate it away. And love, well, it says itself. I mean, I will never, ever negotiate away my ability to find love and beauty everywhere, even if everyone around me says, you know what, this is a horrible place and there is only darkness. I will find the brightest side of it. That is for me to find love because it is always there. A non-negotiable truth for me is that love is all that is. And if I can't see it, then I am blinding myself because it is there. That's a non-negotiable truth.
Always.
So for me, it stays the same. It's a question of how we dress it, and that changes. The older we get, the more we distill it, the more we're able to say that, okay, there are 2 or 3 things that I will not negotiate away. The younger we are, there are more than 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
When we distill it into its core, it's always 2 or 3 things. Gave you that assignment too.
That's so beautiful. It's
Do you remember? Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember. Yes.
Yeah.
I have the notes of it somewhere. I know I just have to find my journal. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I remember writing all that.
Yeah, and I remember that we had very, very similar things. You were talking about freedom. Freedom is a big thing for you. Freedom is, I think, number 1.
Yeah.
And then you have love. I don't remember you talking so much about time, but freedom and love, those 2 were your non-negotiable truths. This is why you and I are doing this today.
Yes, they're everything. It's so beautiful. It's so funny that you got the same question because I asked her, or I responded to that question specifically, and I said, regarding non-negotiables, I think we have non-negotiables from our soul, and then programmed ones from our environment that reside in our ego.
Yes.
And I said the difference between the 2 is knowing if one broke, would you be able to recognize yourself any longer? Or would you simply be letting go of ego programming? So what I mean by that is I used to swear like a sailor. And that before I attempted to take my life at the age of 20. And then after that night, something happened so drastically in me that I stopped everything. I stopped swearing. I stopped drinking. I stopped partying. I stopped, and it didn't come out of my mouth. But it was because I was trying to be right or find the right. It was more in performance than it was truly in myself.
Yes.
And I've let go of that because it's not a soul non-negotiable. It was an ego program. What's the right thing to do? But there are certain non-negotiables that reside in my soul. For instance, freedom, love, and truth that makes us free, not truth as submitting to doctrine or a path or any of these things and we've talked about this so many times. How do we know if something's true? If we can breathe more deeply.
Yes.
What is breathing more deeply? Freedom. If it constrains, constrict, it's not true and we're not free. And so those are emphatically non-negotiable for me. And I think once I realized what was a soul non-negotiable versus the ego programming, that was a huge realization. And I felt like I could breathe, like, oh, I can swear and I'm still loved unconditionally without judgment. I can make a mistake and learn from what I did and still be loved unconditionally. Maybe not from the conditional programming of the ego world and the family structure I came from, but certainly from love itself, from, in my perspective, God, which is love. And so, yeah, that was a huge learning for me.
Yes, it's such a beautiful way of putting it, because it is about the soul and the ego. That's why I'm saying that if you distill it, meaning move away or reduce the ego noise and sit in the silence, you will know what is your non-negotiable truths. And to tell you the truth, 99% of my clients all get to the same space. They say freedom, they say love, they say time. It's at what is at the core, the things that bring you, as I say, freedom, or as you say, freedom to breathe deeply. That is where those truths are. Sometimes you can't even put words to it, but if it allows you to be still and not to feel the fear. If a truth in quotation marks, comes from fear, let's say, I love this house and I don't want to let it go. That's not a truth. You love the space and what you've done with the space, but you can always do that in another space. It's yours. No one can take that away from you. So a real truth, no one can take that away from you. You can be tricked by the ego to believe in that truth, but it's not the truth with capital T.
Yeah, that's right.
And the truth with capital T always comes from your soul. It cannot come from anything else.
Right.
So I actually started writing down thoughts about this question, but then I thought, oh no, let's talk about it on the show, because it's so much easier. But for me, the truth is, when I see the best version of you, I also see the best version of me. So the best version of you and the best version of me are one. They come from the same source. If I do not see that, then I believe in the ego that is creating the separations. And even if it feels true in that moment, that isn't the truth with capital T.
Right.
It is only a question of where the perception comes from. Does it come from your soul or your ego? And you always know what is right to do if you tune into your soul. You know, when you have two things and you say, oh, what should I choose? This is better for that. This is better for this. And then you just sit there and don't know what to choose. If you breathe in, you will know exactly what feels right. The ego will always try to hijack you back and say, but what if, what if, what if? And you say, so what, so what, so what? And you go with your heart.
Yes.
That's how you follow this inner truth. But I mean, it's a question of letting go. And what is it that we are letting go? Well, the ego.
Yes.
All the layers that the ego creates, that is what we are letting go. We are so afraid to do this because ego scares us into keeping them like truths, and they're never the truth. If we know the non-negotiable truths, if we know them, then we also can sense what comes from ego and what comes from soul.
Yes.
So
there's a big philosophical, or I don't know if it's a debate. I wish it was more in the forefront, but public health versus freedom. And ego wants us to stay safe because it's based in fear. And it doesn't matter how much we try to keep people safe. The fact that there is a need for safety means there is a satiating desire to quelch the fear. So it's based in fear. Therefore, it's not based in truth, because fear is never true. It's always going to false evidence appearing real, which sometimes I like when people say that. Sometimes I don't like it. It's like so quaint. I was like, but freedom is a greater virtue than safety, because without freedom, no one is safe. Because when we only think in these echo chambers, these information echo chambers of like, well, if we just all got along, there are people that will never, ever allow themselves to be conquered. And that I appreciate. I actually love it. I honor it. That is a beautiful virtue within humanity. And to not acknowledge the full spectrum of all of our ways of being is to really make the person who's trying to get us all huddled unsafe. Because how did Rome fall? It fell because the barbarians came and said, we're not being let out any longer. You're not going to keep us. We're coming. And the people that were all thinking in this information echo chamber weren't prepared for that level of humanity. And why I think this is important by talking about truth and soul truth, because the non-negotiable, I think our souls, in Hebrew, the word for soul is neshama, which means breath. We can't contain a breath. The breath is free. Our soul is free. So I think when you say your clients, they have all reduced down to love and freedom,
Yes.
I think that's a human. That's sort of, but in ego, it's fear. It's, come on, just come into this. And there's something in me. I will, even if it's the greatest thing. I had a podcast with a person the other day. Even if it's the greatest thing in the world, just because you want me to do it, I'm not going to do it. Just because there's something in me that just says, no. And that's my truth. I'm not pushing that on anyone else. But it stands in contrast to another narrative, I guess. I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, but you're talking about being restricted versus being able to breathe fully and live fully without apologizing for what it is that you're here to explore.
Right.
I usually say our love for life must be greater than our fear of death. It's as soon as we jump into that truth, that there is so much danger that we need protection all the time, we have lost one non-negotiable truth, and that is freedom. What happens when we lose or nudge or steal from a non-negotiable truth is that it gives us pain. It can be soul pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, physical pain. Pain is the red thread. Yes. That is what we get. And if we look around and we see so many people in emotional pain, well, there must be some non-negotiable truth that they are breaking. Otherwise, they wouldn't have this pain within them. So knowing what my non-negotiable truths are, it doesn't mean that you can do exactly right every single time. Life would be boring if you wouldn't do that. You have to test yourself. You have to see, okay, so is this real freedom, or maybe I'm looking for something else? But the freedom to look is freedom in itself. It's not, I won't make any mistakes. That's another box, that's another restriction, that's another fear that can never be true. Everything that pulls you into some kind of restriction or some kind of feeling of fear is not the truth.
Right. That's right.
So it's really easy to know. It's a little bit tougher to exercise in this world as it is now.
Yeah.
And it's also a question of belief systems. Every single belief system thinks that it is the truth. And it's not. It's just a belief system. You can change it anytime you want. A non-negotiable truth cannot be changed. Freedom, how do you change that? It's you're either free or not.
Right. That's right.
It's like being a little pregnant. Be that.
That's right. Which, we know that's not the case. That's right.
Yes.
That's a really good point. You're either free or you're not.
There is no, and if I look at it from a very, very high perspective, the only free beings are children, because they don't understand how this world works, and they still daydream about something that is high and beautiful, and they can stay vulnerable in it.
Yes.
This is why we love it. When we look at children, they remind us of what freedom is. So it's not hard to find your truth. It's tougher to live it here.
Yeah, it is. I like I said, when I attempted to take my life when I was 20, and I started living so tightly. Like I mean, I stopped everything. I was trying to be, I would say, like, I wanted this body to be like an ethereal clothing to like holiness. I was striving. I was reading all these books and spiritual books and praying 2 hours a day. I was fasting for 24 hours, just water for 5 years. I was just going so hard. Well, early on in this new path I embarked on, I got subpoenaed to testify in court. And I reading this and I couldn't remember. It was a really bizarre experience because I was like, what was this for? And it said I was a witness in this crime. And then all these memories started flooding back to me. And what happened was, when I was 19, a buddy was driving my car. We were not drinking. He was just showing me where he used to live, and we were having a good time, and we're young kids and we're just having fun. And a guy hit my car and rear-ended us and then drove away. And when we started following the car, trying to get him to pull over, I called 911, and he said, tell him you're driving. And I'm like, and they're like, who's driving the vehicle? And I'm like, I'm driving right now on whatever road we were on. So when the police finally came and they took our police statements, I wrote I was driving the car. And they eventually caught the guy. He was on some sort of drug, and they arrested him. And I gave my police statement. My friend gave a police statement. Everything was accurate except one thing: who was driving the car. And I gave it. We were 19. Then my life changed radically 5 months later, and I forgot all about it until a year later. I get subpoenaed to be a witness against this guy in court because there was a lot of other crimes that this guy had done. Mm-hmm. And I realized, for me, I had to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And I called my buddy and I said, I'm so sorry. I have to say I lied. And he's like, what are you talking about? What does it matter? It doesn't matter. And I was like, it might not seem like it matters, but somewhere like deep in me, it matters. I have to tell. So I called the prosecuting attorney, who she thought I was going to be her witness. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell her, and she was like, were you on drugs? Were you drinking? Like, why would you do that? And she was also like, why are you telling me this right now? And she did ask me, why am I telling her? And I said, I don't want to lie anymore. I'm trying to live right. My life changed. I told her, try to take my life. I'm just trying to live right. She was like, okay, well, this changes things. Yeah, it's strange, and this changes things, but I'm still going to have you be a witness. So my buddy and I show up at court. We sit outside the chamber. The defendant, the prosecuting attorney, everyone's in there, the defense attorney and the judge. And out of me and my buddy, only one person gets called up to the stand, and it was me. Of course. So I get up and I sit on the stand. And this judge, I'll never forget, he looked at me and the prosecutor says, I want to explain something he called and said. And then they started grilling me, and the defense attorney, well, this, how do we believe you? Anything else? All these things. Mm-hmm. And the judge said, I want you to know you committed a crime, and anything you say can and will be used against you in this court of law. And the bailiff is here prepared to take you away if we so choose to press charges against you. And I'm like, okay, so be it. Like, I was ready to be arrested. I was like, okay, here I am sitting for this guy's crime, and it ended up being my own crime. But I told the truth, and the prosecuting attorney, they asked her if they wanted to press charges, and she said, no, I'm not going to press charges. I wish he wouldn't have lied, but we're not going to press charges. And they let me go. And my friend and I never were friends closely after that, because he was not happy with what I did. But I will tell you, something like below my soul, something deep where I am like tethered to this reality, healed. And that was a non-negotiable for me. That was, I had to tell the truth. And I had an opportunity. Not everyone has an opportunity to redo, wipe the slate clean, but I, in that moment, had that opportunity. And even right now, I feel the sense of like, I did that. I spoke the truth. I didn't cower when I had the opportunity to. And anyway, that was a non-negotiable for me, regardless of the consequence.
Yes, exactly. It's a question of where it comes from and what it does to your life. If you're carrying a lie, it has a certain frequency within you, and this frequency will be a part of your being. Yeah. So it becomes a part of you. It's like having a tainted aura, or something's missing, like a limb is missing or something. It feels like that when you're walking with a lie within you, or something that you perceive as something that isn't true to you. So of course you want to release yourself from this. You want to let it go. And the universe usually gives you joy back and freedom to breathe when you do such a thing, because you're acknowledging that this isn't a part of your true frequency. This isn't a part of your true self. Right. It's a part of something else. It's a part of this physical world, or the ego, or the separation. Something that doesn't feel good is per definition not a part of your soul and your alignment with soul. So you need to ask yourself, what is it? Like finding your shadow story in your internal dialogue, asking yourself, what am I telling myself in order to feel this way? And what you were telling yourself, I don't know what that was, but it probably had to do with, if I say something, then I will lose a friend. Well, that's a lie, because a friend, you won't lose a real friend. That's right. You won't lose a real friend. You can't lose a real friend. That's right. So if they leave, they're not your friend. That's right. And that's the shadow story you keep telling yourself, that, okay, if I say this, I'll lose a friend, and then I'll end up alone. There's no one there to mirror myself in.
That's right. That's right.
And what those things are usually the things that stop us from expressing our truth, is because we're afraid if we express the truth, then no one will love us. And this always comes from our past. Yeah. If a parent isn't able to validate the core of a child, which is the soul, which is the best version of that person, if a parent isn't done with their own demons and stuff, and they are not able to see that and validate that, this little child will look for that validation on the outside for the rest of its life, until it realizes that it doesn't need the validation from the outside. So that is the truth. You don't need the validation. You're born with it. It's just that the programming, the first 6 years of our lives, where our parents are the ones programming us with how this reality works and who we are in this reality. If they are lost in their own world, how can they help you? So the first 6 years, the way I see it, is the karma. Because they help us create space for the karma to be here. So they, of course, unknowingly, it's not a question of them knowing, but they fulfill a role in our life which is programming us in a certain way. And if we if we quickly see the program, let's say when we're in our teens and something, and we release ourselves from it, then we release karma. We let go of ego stuff, and we know who we truly are, because who we truly are is always at the center. It is the observer of this world, and everything else, as we always say, is something that is put upon us, that we allow to become a part of us. Right. But it can look like a truth, but it's not a truth if it doesn't come from within, and if it's not from love. To me, I call this my love filter. I do not allow anything out of me unless it's past my love filter. Yes. And sometimes it's really hard to put the love filter up. I fail, and we all do, but when I do it, it always gives me truth back.
Mm.
And what is that? Well, that is freedom and love.
That's right. Yes.
Always. It's a bulletproof thing.
You think, because hearing that, what I did and what you're talking about, because we all make mistakes. This is not about being perfect. This is about awareness of our own self. And are we walking in soul alignment, or are we out of alignment? But it takes courage to realign. But it also takes, and I find that this courage to do so, first of all, we don't hear about it. No, I mean, besides this conversation, and even in the self-help world and the spiritual community, I don't hear about courage too often to break away or step through or find yourself apart from, doesn't matter if your family. We were with someone last night, their whole family's turned against them, because they're not falling in line. And they have had to have the courage to come into themselves and say, this is me. I'm no longer part of a group. I'm not part of the Borg in Star Trek, the black cube that just brought in more and people became faceless, nameless, all the same. It takes courage. And why, I guess I'm almost asking, like, why is no one, where are the courageous souls to step into their truth? And I know they're everywhere, but it also sometimes feels like, where is the courage?
The courage, I mean, that kind of courage that you're talking about, you don't see it. It's an internal thing, and it's very private. And because of that, it is very honest, because it's not done in order for others to validate your courage. It is done because you feel that it is the right way to live. And this courage, it comes in every now moment. You have to choose that. You have to choose ownership of yourself. And that's a scary place to be, because we live in a society where it is promoted to stay in a childlike state. And that's beautiful if it would have been, being vulnerable. This is more like a needy child, a child that doesn't know that it has any power.
Right.
So, of course, it takes courage to stand there and say, I own myself, including everything that is in it. We are taught to excuse ourselves and say that, oh, I'm so sorry for this and I'm so sorry for that. We are taught not to own the mistakes that we made and learn from them. We're just taught to stay in the mistakes and stay in some kind of guilty place. And the courage is to say, I see all of this and I take ownership of it. When you start taking ownership of it, you become a wisdom keeper. This is why I love to call myself a wisdom keeper. Yes. Because this means that everything that I have experienced in my life, there is no shame or guilt in any of it. It is instead something that I look at and use as fuel to go forth in my life. I look at it and I say, I see this, I know this is what I've learned, this is how I will do in the future. And I use it as a force to bring me forward or to grow in my consciousness, because I don't think it's forward and backward, I think it's growth.
Yes.
To grow in my consciousness. But I can only do that if I live my truth, looking at everything through a lens of love, or my love filter, as I say. This means including myself in it. So when I take ownership of everything, if I do not include myself in this love filter, I end up feeling guilty for everything. But if I look at it through my love filter and say, I see everything that is there, and yet here I am, a loving human being, I can own it. That's where the courage is, to own things. We're not encouraged to own ourselves in this society.
That's so good. Yeah.
You hear the word.
That's so good. I love these word plays. I love this. That is so, the lack of encouragement from the narrative in society is keeping people from not becoming a free soul, liberated soul, a sovereign being, the hero of their own story. I just finished for I don't know how many times I've seen it, the Matrix series, and I was watching the last scene, and I was really thinking about Smith was the counter
The agent,
to Neo,
yeah.
the agent Smith, but he broke out of the Matrix because he understood that you could die and come back. When he killed Neo and Neo came back, he said it did something to Smith, and he broke out of the Matrix, but the machines couldn't stop Smith. And Smith wanted to take over everything, and Smith was the counterpart to Neo. But Smith had to replicate himself over and over and over to equal the power of Neo. And as I'm watching this movie, which I do believe this movie is telling us the truth veiled in Hollywood cinematics, Neo fights him, that last fight scene. And I'm thinking, what are they actually telling us in this movie? That the more he let go of believing the Matrix and the physics of the Matrix, the more he just surrendered and realized whatever he wanted was the reality. He didn't have to be limited to the Matrix programming. If he just surrendered, I felt this, like, then everything that's outside him that he's perceiving, he can create himself. He can fly, he can blow things away with his hands. But it wasn't until he allowed Smith at the very end to put his hand into him, and he surrendered the final fear of what if I can't win. And he turns into Agent Smith, and Smith, like, is it over? And all he goes is, and he looks like Smith, but he just nods, it's over. And then from the inside out, he destroys Smith from the inside out. And I find this relevant to what we're talking about: courage, soul, non-negotiable. It was to the very point of death, surrender and not be afraid, and have the courage to say, I know truth apart from the physics of this, even the quantum realm of this. I am all that is, and I cannot be destroyed. It was almost like his soul was what destroyed Smith and brought peace, not the ego, not the, well, if this does this and he moves here and I fight him and none of that mattered.
Strategizing. Yes.
Exactly. None of that mattered. It was surrendering to truth. And from that place, he destroyed it all. And I find that took so much courage. That's courageous.
It is courageous because it's a matter of life and death. It's existential to understand how this reality is created. And when you said inside out, I remember one of the most important things when my mother-in-law passed away, and I kind of tapped into a communication with her. And the last thing that I communicated with her, and I didn't know that I was communicating with her, but this came to me in a dream. It started off like a dream. It was the night she passed away. And I was falling asleep, and I heard her voice saying, it's inside out. And I was thinking, what is inside out? So I went back to sleep. And again, I was awakened with the words inside out. And then she said, tell Gregor. That's my husband. And I was thinking, oh my God, I need to wake him up. I didn't want to. So this happened to me 6 times, she said. 6 times she woke me up, and 6 times she said, it's inside out. So I woke Gregor up and I said, I have to give you a message or I won't be able to sleep. It's inside out. And then I went to sleep. Lucas, it took me 2 years to grasp what that was. I was thinking that maybe she was trying to send me a message of how she passed away, that she had a hemorrhage in her brain, and that it was something from the inside out. It wasn't because she fell. I tried to bend this like a pretzel inside out, and I couldn't get it. And then 2 years later, it just dawned upon me that what she was trying to tell me is the ultimate truth of this reality. We are creating this reality inside out. We are creating it with our frequency, which is matched by the intelligent formless field into something that literally matches this frequency. So it means that the power is inside, and everything on the outside is an extension of that power, or the blockage of that power.
Yes.
I was like, how did I not get this? Why did it take me 2 years to get this? It is from the inside out. It is created from the inside out. And that is one of those truths that I know, because each and every one of us is creating this reality from the inside out. And we are like islands in this formless field or sea, and we connect to each other with the creations that we are creating. And then if it matches in one way or the other, we are co-creating. So we are literally co-creating this reality, but it is created from within. And realizing this, we know where to start the change on the outside. But if you want to realize this, first you need to let go of all the belief systems that are around you, and
That is so good.
and see, where does this truth come from? Is it from love or fear? If it's fear, it is a belief system created
That will always ask for the outside in.
Yes. Yes.
Isn't that the case? Like, it will always say group think, someone save me, make me feel safe. It's always from outside in, but truth is from inside out. That is, sorry to cut you off. That is so good.
After this, I could never ever say, like, you made me feel this, or they made me do this.
Yes.
They cannot make me feel or do anything until I do it and I feel it. It's not there. No one can make me feel, think, or do anything if I know my own truth, and if I trust it, and if I own myself in it. And as I said, it's in the details. If you go into the details and you feel entangled in the details, it's not true. True is always transparent and simple, and it is never irrational. It always feels right.
Right.
So if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't true.
That's right. And that is right. That's right.
And that is right. Yes.
It's I have this quote, the two quotes that when I had my company, it was one of our five codes of conduct. But it said, just because you stand alone doesn't mean you're wrong. It could mean you're first.
Yes, that is what, and here's where the fear comes in, because what happens when we're children, if our parents don't see us, we feel like we're left out in the cold.
Yes.
And that feeling is horrific. We do not want to feel that again. So this is why when we grow up, we are looking for groups to be a part of them, because we don't want to stand outside in the cold. We feel rejected. The soul can never feel rejected because it knows that it is one with everything else. There is nothing to reject it.
Right.
But the ego feels rejected because it is all about separation. And you know that I have a special take on ego. Ego is not always negative because ego contains your desires.
Yes.
But when ego starts exploring fear, that is when it all becomes twisted and turned, and you might think that something that is utterly fearful is the truth and you need to protect yourself from it. And from a higher perspective, it never is.
Right.
I actually wanted to read a chapter from my book, which is called Oneness. It's a short chapter, but it describes a little bit of how we can be one and yet be separate. This is something that I thought about when I was a child so many times. So it became a chapter in my book, and I will. So here we go. Oneness. All is one. One is all that is. I am one. As a child, I could not get my mind around the concept that I am one with everyone else. How could that be possible? Clearly, I was separated from the others. I was not the same as my mother and my father. I was not the same as my brothers. I was not the same as the children in the schoolyard. I was not the same as anyone on the bus, in our neighborhood, on the planet, in the universe. I was me, just me and no one else. How could I possibly be one with everything else when obviously I was the one experiencing everything else? How could I be one with someone while at the same time experiencing them outside of me and other than me? If I am one with everything, where do I end and where do you begin? If I am one with everything, then what is outside of me? I would torment my school teacher with these questions, hoping that he, as a grown-up, would have figured it out. It took me years of mind-bending to truly grasp the concept of oneness without losing myself in its synchronistically paradoxical nature. To come closer to some kind of understanding of the concept of being one with everything, I figured I had to start by asking the right questions. How would you know who you are or what you are if you were the only one in existence? There would be nothing with which to compare yourself. There would be nothing to interact with, to experience, to be passionate about, to love, to explore. While this scenario would probably be interesting for a while, you would eventually get bored and want something to do or to explore. You would want to interact with something that is not you, something that could surprise you, something that could give you a specific experience. Let's play with the abstract thought that there is nothing outside of you and that you are the one being all that is. How would you solve the problem of boredom? Since there is nothing outside of you, you are all that is. There is no option other than to divide yourself into smaller parts of yourself, erase the knowledge of your true self in those smaller parts, and just for the creative fun of it, give the parts roles to play. You would then set up a scenario in which the smaller parts would interact with each other and report back to you on their sorrows and joys, fears and love, worries and happy experiences. Every time a part got tired of the role it played, you would give it a different, more interesting scenario to act out. Since you know, trust and love every part of yourself, you would allow everything to be explored. Nothing would be excluded. Every experience would be unconditionally accepted in eternity for the joy of being. You are the one being. You are the one perceiving. You are the one experiencing. You are the one. Without you, there is no one. Oh, and one more thing. If the universe is infinite, stretching out in all directions, isn't it safe to assume that no matter where you are always at the center of it? And so am I, and so is everything else. Oneness, a funny paradox, isn't it? I feel like this thing described to me how I can be separate in my ego and one with everyone else, the soul. Because it would be boring if we all were the same.
Yeah.
That's why we have egos. That's why we have things that are untrue. That is why there is darkness. That is why there is shadows, because it makes life more exciting. It is when we start believing that that is the truth with capital T, right, that life becomes painful and horrific.
And it's almost that boring, yes, and void of creation. We are here to create and experience the creation that we are here to do. So if we're all the same, the Borg in Star Trek, I will keep referencing this because it's relevant to today, doesn't create, it only consumes. There is no creation in the Borg. Agent Smith in the Matrix does not create the Matrix, only consumes and destroys the Matrix. So if we were all the same, there would only be destruction. But because we are all different, but one in our soul, we are all here to create.
Yes.
And that's the oneness that we're all part of, this one infinite universe that is continually creating, continually expanding, not constricting and finally like, I can barely breathe, keep your mouth above water, and then gone. Like, that's the worst.
That's an experience, but it's not a pleasant one.
Right.
It's like what you're saying, or not what you're saying, you said something else, but what I'm saying is we are here to transform thoughts into matter.
Yes.
It is when we lose track of this, when we think that there is a reality that is created without us being a part of it, we're something outside of it and we're just consuming it, that is when it is painful. That is when we are not in touch with this creative flow of life. We can never lose that flow, because as long as you're breathing, you're connected to it. But we can create so many blockages in it that we forget that we have this creative flow. And that is the purpose of our life here, to realize that we are the creators of our own life and reality and destiny. We are the creators of it here, and we can play with it by not sitting in guilt and believing the untruth that the ego will make you believe. And by the way, the truth is always in the now moment. It can't be experienced anywhere else either.
Right.
Because it is connected to soul. And everything that is projected into the future, like, oh, this is going to happen and that is going to happen and I need to be afraid and I need to keep myself safe and whatever it is the ego painting up a scenario which changes your frequency and changes the world outside. But you are disconnected from your own creation because you don't want it, and yet it is there. So if you have to change that frequency, go into and ask yourself through your soul, your love filter, where is the love in all of this? What can I tweak so that it might be different, so that I will create something that I want? And that's how you connect back to that free flow, creative flow, the life force that is through you. It's a question of what you tell yourself, the shadow story or the light story. Do you want to listen to the ego trying to contain you in this little box? Or do you want to feel free and look and see, where is my next move of love?
Right. This, your truth, we call this finding your truth, is the path to your freedom, right? That is what we are here in love. You're saying love, and I'm like, unconditional love sets everyone free. Yes. Conditional love keeps everyone bound, which is not love. Because
but
go. Yeah.
Unconditional love sets you free. Conditional love will keep you in prison. Because it is tethered to something, conditions. It is not free. Right. Unconditional means there is no tethers, it is free. That's the difference between the two. I know that it's hard for human beings to live this concept of unconditional love. Took me years to bend that in my head because I didn't understand what it was. I could maybe give it to others, but I couldn't give it to myself. I couldn't include myself in that. Well, I think that for me, what kind of flipped this over was when I gave myself permission to understand myself. Stand under my highest self and understand myself. Understanding myself means that I stop guilt tripping myself for the mistakes that I'm making here, because there are no mistakes. I stop believing the lie that the ego is telling me and see the truth that is me. Yes. And that is unconditional love, to understand and own it. To love it, even if it's not, the best version of me in that now moment.
Yeah, that's right.
So owning it, that's the courage we were talking about. It all comes back to one thing again. We can go around, but we come to this place where freedom, unconditional love, and soul are the things that most people would say, yeah, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have one and the same. There is one truth.
Yes.
And there are many truths out there. It's like we know what the truth is, but we take different paths to that truth. And every path is a truth in a way.
Which is why perhaps the word bless is be less. Is that it's the blessing is to undo all that which is put upon us. If I bless you, I'm relieving and removing. And if we bless ourselves, we're removing the stuff
Conditions.
To get stripped down truth of the
letting go.
Letting go.
Yeah. True. That is the truth.
Yes. The bless is to undo and release and be free. It's amazing. I love all this.
Yes, because when we do this, what happens is we relax, we're not in fear, and when we're not in fear, we become curious, because that is our normal state of being. Curious. We have no idea what this world is like, so we are curious, like a child walking through the forest and looking everywhere, curious because it doesn't know what is going to happen, but it trusts that it's going to be good. It doesn't project fear into the future because it wants to stay safe where it is. It actually moves forward and opens up and allows things to come because it trusts. So trust, that's where the courage is actually needs to be switched on, because if you don't trust, then you don't have courage to take that first step.
That's right.
So trusting that your source is unconditional love, and so is mine, and so is everyone else. Everything else is the ego creating smoke screens and illusions.
100%.
So if you're able to see through these smoke screens and illusions, well, you have great vision then. And you're in a great place to know your truth.
It's beautiful. Brother Blake, he just said, absolutely love today. Thank you. All truth. Beautiful.
I love Blake.
Love you, Brother Blake. This has been really beautiful. And I think this is perfect for me today to hear. I love when we create these, because I always leave like, and it encourages me to keep going as deep within inside out. Like Neo just surrendered everything, even death, the concept of death, even the concept of pain, the concept of the matrix concept, everything. He just, and from the inside out, brought balance. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yes. You know, I've realized that you find this truth from time to time. You find it and you sit in it. It can be a car accident, like in my some years ago when I had this car accident. I found the truth there, and I had it for a couple of seconds, and it changed my way of looking at reality. And then I'm pulled back into this co-created reality. And then I'm on my path again, looking for this truth. So it's actually like breathing in and breathing out. Sometimes we know more of the truth. Sometimes we know less of the truth. It's like waking up and falling asleep, waking up and falling asleep. And I never put the restrictions on myself saying, I need to be awake all the time, because I can't. Right. I'm in this world, and it will sing me a lullaby and I fall asleep. And then I wake up and I ask myself, oh my God, why did I do that?
Yeah.
That is a part of the human experience. I did the same thing as you when I was in my 20s. I thought that everything was supposed to be spiritual. I was here to explore spirituality. No, I'm not. That is where I come from. That is my core. That is who I am. I need to remember it from time to time. But I'm actually here to explore the physicality of this reality and my own creation. When I understand that it is my own creation, even if I can't recognize myself in everything, it's still my own creation. And the fun part is to see, how did I create this? What do I need to change? It's a game. It's a play that we're playing here, and it's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be painful. If it's painful, then you need to change something to realign yourself to this higher self, understand yourself.
That's right. That's right.
So it's just a game, and we're playing it.
Yes, and have fun.
Yes, have fun. Enjoy it today.
This was beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for everyone watching. Blake, thank you, brother. And we'll do this. Actually, next weekend, we will not do this. So we'll take another break, but we'll be back in a couple weeks. And thank you. It's good.